why do we need this book? Why is this book so important to you, and why do you think people should check it out?
Thank you. We need this book because there are so many non-believers out there in this country who are still hesitant to say that they don't believe. And they're hesitant for a number of reasons. They're hesitant because there is a stigma against atheists, as I think we know, whereby people think that atheists are at best sort of angry and supercilious, and at worst immoral, and or amoral, you know. So I think a lot of people in this country don't believe in God, and still are keeping it to themselves. And the reason that I want them not to keep it to themselves, if at all possible, well, there's two. The first reason is because just personally, it is an incredible feeling to get to be honest with the people around you. And it gives you a clear path to trying to figure out and face the big questions that we all face. But if you can, you know, if you can go ahead and dispense with the religious answers that maybe you grew up with, but you don't really agree with, then you can start to think about those things for yourself. So that's the number one reason, is that personal reason. And that's the reason that I kind of started with. And the second reason is a political reason, because in our country right now, the religious right especially is gaining more and more power, and we're kind of letting it happen. And I feel like the more people who acknowledge that they don't believe in God, that they think of God as a human invention, the more we can push religion back into the private realm where it belongs and out of our laws.
I want to bring up something you mentioned a second ago. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, one thing I noticed in the book is you're deliberately not angry. You are not mocking religion. And look, I cannot tell if that's just your personality, because that's just not who you are, or if
Mm-hmm.
that's a deliberate choice in this book, because it seems like it's written for people who are on the fence, maybe have some doubts, but you're not, unlike those quote unquote new atheist books, you're not going out of your way to mock them. You're not mocking religion as a whole. You're not really trashing religion in any meaningful way. Instinctively, I feel like that's what I would go to. But like, I'm wondering if that was a choice you made, if there were parts where you're like, I think this will rub people the wrong way. I'm not going to do that. Let me rewrite this section, or anything like that. Or if it's just, is it in your nature not to do that?
Well, I guess there's a couple of answers. It is in my nature. I mean, and that sort of well, friendly, conciliatory approach is probably why it took me a long time even to say I was an atheist. You know, there's a the first section of the book talks about my early life when I was a Reformed Jew, and I never really believed in a God that actually was listening to me, but I never said so. And partly that's because I don't want to, I didn't want to make people uncomfortable. I didn't want to make people angry. And I think a lot of people feel that way, and that's why a lot of people are reticent to say what they believe. But I thought it was important to show that you can be forthright. I think the book is very forthright. I don't sort of pull punches in terms of my viewpoint. You can be forthright without being antagonistic. And honestly, this book is not at all trying to get believers to stop believing. I wouldn't know how to do that, and I wouldn't want to do that. And there's even places in the book where I say, I'm glad certain friends of mine who have suffered tragedies have this thing that they believe that makes them feel better about it. I wouldn't take that away from them. I'm really focused on the people who don't believe, but haven't mustered the courage to say that. Whether they are so-called nuns, whether they're Reformed Jews, whether they're Catholics. I mean, there's a lot of people out there even who would count as religiously affiliated on a survey who don't really think that there's a supernatural being in charge of the universe.
Let
So,
me go
yeah.
back to that for a second. So one of the things, I think you write this early in the book, you said one of the goals of your book was to have a reader stop for a second, think about what you believe, and consider telling the truth. And I'm right there with you when it comes to the that question. Is there, I think, I forgot who said this. It's one of those people who wrote a book like 15 some years ago. Is there a nice way to encourage people to admit the truth? You said it was hard for you to come to terms with your own atheism. What is the nice way to get people to acknowledge that the truth may be different than their religious traditions have taught them?
You mean, what is the nice way? How do I do it nicely?
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
okay.
yes. How do you do
Okay.
it? And also,
Right.
is there a good way you have found to have that
Yeah.
conversation with someone so that it doesn't feel like you're demeaning them, or so that they don't feel like you're looking down upon them?
Right. I Well, so the book isn't out yet. And I have already had wonderful conversations with people that I've been completely surprised to find share my sort of metaphysical view of the world. And I think one thing I would say to people who are hesitant to express how they really see things to someone they think or assume is a believer is that you just never know, and they're because there are these disincentives to saying what we believe, and because people have this stigma, and because there's still in this country this general sense that believing is the moral thing to do, and believing is kind of what everybody does, and that you really have to sort of be out on a limb to say that you're an atheist. um, there's there are so many people who will respond to your expression of honesty with relief, with honesty themselves, or with the statement that, yeah, that's something they really want to talk about. They'd like to talk about it. So I think kind of getting over, for me at least, getting over this sense that I was automatically going to be offending someone, or that I would automatically get a hostile response, has been revelatory. And I want people to know that if they are considering being more honest about how they feel, they're really, I think they're very likely to find a lot of people who take comfort from that and will find community that way. So I guess that's the answer.
No, that's great. You talk a lot in the book about raising your own kids, and
Mhm.
because you didn't want to lie to them, like you were saying, you didn't raise them with the religion you grew up with. You didn't raise them with any other religion.
Right.
Has that created any problems for them? I wonder if, because they're younger, because they're probably surrounded by a lot more people who are non-religious, whatever label they use.
Mhm.
I wonder if it's easier for them, or have they been able to navigate it in a way that is different from what you thought it would be like?
Is it easier for them than it was for me, you mean? Or is it
Yes, for one.
Yeah.
And also,
Yeah.
have they encountered any struggles? Because you said it was difficult for you to come out. I know for
Mhm.
a fact I found it difficult at first to come out as well. I
Right.
didn't really do it to people that I wasn't super close to until like after high school. I don't know that I would have that same struggle today, but I don't know
Mhm.
what the challenges would be either.
This is an interesting question. I should ask them. I want to, make it clear that my struggle was mostly inside me and against, my own need for approval, need to be loved, need all that stuff. I was in a incredibly fortunate situation of having very liberal parents. I live in the Northeast. I work at home. I have liberal friends. There was conflict within the family with my father-in-law in particular, but uh, essentially, I was taking very little risk. I'm sure there are people who don't like me because I'm an atheist, but I really don't wanna think about that. No. And I think my kids share those privileges. We're not in the middle of a very we're not in the Bible Belt. We're not in the middle of a very sort of religious area. Um I don't think they have ever felt at risk, in any way. And I guess I'm curious what kinds of conversations they have had with their friends. Um, but I feel that I did raise them with a sense of, it's kind of not worth it if you're not gonna be honest. And so they have a sense that they have that right, and that not only that right, but that it's a pleasure. So I don't think they have the hesitations that I do. They're also very polite, kids. So they're not necessarily going to bring something up in a situation where it's not appropriate.
I would
They didn't go around telling their friends that Santa what didn't exist, or anything like that. They didn't they weren't gleefully, sort of uh blowing people's delusions or anything like that. They recognize. I think I taught them both that God is a human invention, and also that a lot of people use that invention. That they have a clear view of the situation. So